Hello everybody, welcome to What the Wednesday. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Ali Valdez, and if you're new here, please subscribe. This channel is all about true crime, solved mysteries, unsolved mysteries, unexplained mysteries, just bringing all of these cases to light and spreading them to as many people as possible. So the case I'm going to talk about this week is, I know I say this every week, they're all extremely heartbreaking, of course, but this one, I feel like this one hits differently because this one is something that I think most everybody who's going to be watching can relate to, and that is the case of Nicole Vanderheyden. Now, as you can see from the title, this is a solved case. There is somebody who is in prison for Nicole's murder. However, you'll get to see why I still wanted to bring up this case. So let's just get right into it. Nicole was absolutely stunning. She was blonde, she was so beautiful, and she was extremely intelligent. She had a bachelor's degree in both education as well as like 2 different science degrees. She loved teaching, she loved science, she loved health, she loved fitness, she loved the way the body worked. She was also an amazing mother. She had 2 children from a previous marriage, and she just had a beautiful 6-month-old with a brand new man in her life named Doug Dietrich. She thought this guy was going to be the one. She met Doug, and like right off the bat, I think they only dated for like a month, 30 days before she was pregnant, and they were moved in together and they were ready to start a life together. On May 20th of 2016, Nicole and Doug met up with a bunch of their friends to go to a concert. So this concert was for the Steel Panther, and it was at a bar named the Watering Hole. And they were out with a bunch of their friends. One of the interviews from one of Nicole's friends said that they hadn't gone out since New Year's Eve. So they were super stoked to be able to give her a fun night out, give her a break. While at home, Nicole's mom was going to be babysitting kind of the first half of the night, and then they had one of Nicole's really good friends, Dallas, come over kind of the last half of the night because they knew they wanted to, be out late and not kind of worry about what time they were going to come home. So they wanted to make sure they obviously had babysitters lined up so that they could have a stress-free night. They had arrived at the Watering Hole around 8 p.m. and at this point, Nikki and Doug and all of their friends immediately started drinking. They were taking shots. They were drinking pretty heavily at this point, and they were there enjoying the concert until around 11 p.m. At this point, like I said, the concert had ended around 11, and this is kind of when the night starts going downhill. Greg and Doug had spotted a couple of friends from high school, and they decided to basically hang back and talk to these friends while the rest of their group, including Nikki, basically left and went to a bar down the street called the Sardine Can. This kind of upset Nikki because, that's her boyfriend. She wanted to enjoy the night with him. Obviously, everybody was getting, pretty drunk at this point. Basically, Nikki was feeling like Doug didn't want to be with her that night. He was staying back to hang out with these other friends. And this is kind of when I start to get into that point of this case is so horrific to me because I feel like everybody has been there. Everyone has had a night where they, have drank a little bit too much and you get in a huge fight with your significant other over something so stupid because you're both drinking. And oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, you guys. My camera's not focusing. I just feel like that always happens to people. And I think Nikki kind of thought because Doug didn't want to go with her and he wanted to hang back, it was because he saw some other girl or, these people from high school they noticed that they want to kind of chit chat with. It just didn't sit right with Nikki. Greg and Doug were like, don't you guys worry, we'll meet up with you soon. We just want to say hi really quick. We'll be right over. So at this point, the friends are all at the Sardine Can, and Doug and Greg are taking their sweet ass time getting over there. And at this point, Nikki's getting pretty irritated, and she starts to text Doug all of these pretty shitty texts. She was using a lot of profanity, right? She's drunk. She's pissed at him. Again, you guys, it just breaks my heart because everybody's gone through this. Everybody's been, at this point in their lives before, if not more than once. And she's basically like, who are you with? I know there's some chick back there that you're hanging out with. And she's just super pissed off. And he isn't really responding to her. She tries calling him. He's not answering. At this point, he knows she's pissed because he's seeing these super angry texts. And he kind of just texts her back something like, chill out, we're on our way over, calm down. Like, he's trying not to like engage in her text. At this point, Greg is like, all right, Doug, like, we've been gone a lot longer than we said we would. Like, let's head back. Everyone's texting us. Everyone's starting to call us. Nikki is just getting madder and madder, and she tries to call Doug and he doesn't answer, and she's so mad. So another one of the girlfriends in their group, she was like, girl, I got you. Let me call him. She calls him and he answers her phone call and not Nikki's 30 seconds later. So of course this makes her even more furious, you know, because now she's like, oh, so he's gonna completely ignore my phone call, but he's gonna answer hers. And again, everything is just 10 times worse when you're in this stage, right? And so Nikki flips. She is done with this guy. She starts walking out of the bar. Her friends are like, Nikki, it's fine, chill out, they're on their way, everything's good, don't worry. And she's just done. She's over it. She wants to leave. One of the friends that was in the group decides to obviously go after her. He follows her out and kind of runs up to her and is like, Nikki, stop, like, at least let us get you, you know, a taxi home. We need to get you a ride home. Just chill out, go home, be with your son. We'll take care of Doug. He's being an asshole, whatever. However, Nikki is so furious. Like I said, it's kind of at that point when you're at your tipping point and like anything anyone tries to say to you just makes it worse. That's kind of what happened. So Nikki was like, get away from me. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want anyone in my face. Leave me alone. And she's basically screaming this at him. He said other people on the street started looking over at them, kind of, you know, and he didn't want to look like he was doing anything. He didn't want to bother Nikki. He didn't want to hurt her. So he just said, okay, walk it off. It's fine. And he backs off. At this point, Nikki is quite literally wandering the streets alone. And they are by kind of a nearby, I don't want to say like a full-on forest, but kind of like a woods area. At this time, everyone started trying to get a hold of Doug and basically say, this is what happened. Nikki left. We need to sober up. We need to go find her. What's going on? And this is when he starts calling Nikki several times. She answers eventually, and she's obviously very intoxicated and very upset, and she isn't making any sense. And Doug is like, where are you? Just tell us where you're at. We're gonna come and pick you up. And things start just getting worse and worse from here, because this is when Nikki's phone dies. And Doug's pretty positive that her phone actually died and that she didn't hang up on him. And as soon as he called her back, her phone just kept going straight to voicemail. Now, I also want to note that in the midst of all of this panic and everything going on, Greg and Doug decide to snort some Adderall. And they did this thinking that it was going to sober them up, or at least try to take the edge off of what they were drinking so that they could figure out how to find Nikki. By 2:15, everyone basically just decided that she had gotten a taxi home and she was gonna be fine. So Doug gets an Uber home and he walks into the room. It's like 2:30 a.m. He walks in and the babysitter is still there. Now this is Dallas, right? This is Nikki's friend. He comes in, she says he's obviously intoxicated, but he is still very concerned about the situation. He asked Dallas to please call Nikki, please find out where she is. Please don't stop calling her. She doesn't want to talk to me. She's mad. I'm just worried about her. I want to make sure she's gonna get home safe. And at this point, Doug basically was just like, she's pissed, you know, I need to just give her the night. I'm just gonna go to bed and figure this out tomorrow when I'm more level-headed and whatever. On the morning of May 21st, it's now 3 a.m. and this is when Doug accounts that he finally fell asleep. Now, he then woke up around 6 a.m. to feed Dylan. That was their 6-month-old boy. He then went back to bed around 11 o'clock when he put Dylan back for a nap. At this point, he was still under the impression that Nikki had gone and slept at a friend's house, needed a night to cool things off, and he just kind of was trying to give her space, which in the circumstance isn't maybe the best thing to do. But all throughout this time, their group of friends was texting each other saying, hey, has anyone heard from Nikki? Does anyone have any updates? And so far, nobody knew anything. Nobody had heard from Nikki yet. We're nearing, you know, noon, 1 p.m. At this time, Doug did contact Nikki's family and said, I'm gonna call the police. This has gone too far. It's now nearing 4:30 p.m. and not a single word from her. And I mean, she was a mother, you guys, and everybody knew how much Nikki cared about Dylan and how much she cared about all of her kids. And they were like, this is too far. In the meantime, on Hoffman Road, 2 hikers had stumbled upon the body of a nude female. They had called 911 at 1:54 p.m. So this is where it does kind of get a little confusing. You just kind of have to remember the time frames going on. This was the time that on the other end of things, Doug was just kind of texting his friends, texting his buddies, hey, have you heard? While in the meantime, this body had been found. At this point, deputies made it over to Doug's house around 5 p.m. that night. Now, they hadn't known about this body that was found yet. The police knew, but nobody had even identified the body at this point. So as deputies arrived to talk about the missing person case that he just filed, or the missing persons report that he had just filed, Tracy Holschbach, who was the sergeant assigned to the case, noticed that Doug looked extremely exhausted. She said he looked pale, he had huge bags under his eyes, and that he just looked terrified and stressed. She also noted that she did not see anything, like a physical altercation had taken place. He had no scratches anywhere, no bruises on his hands or anything of the sort. So Holzbach sat in the kitchen with Doug, and she was actually secretly recording him the entire time. And she wasn't like interrogating him, right? I mean, this was just a missing persons report. She was just asking questions, letting him answer, because again, they knew about this body who had just been found. While Doug was being very cooperative, he even offered up his phone right then and there to forensics to see, hey, can this help with anything? Can you go through my phone? So after the police had been over at the house talking with everybody, it had been a couple hours that had gone by now, and word got out about this body that was found. It was all over the news, and all of the friends texted each other, did you hear about this body? Everybody was freaking out. Now remember, at this point, the body had not been identified as Nikki. And I just want to mention here really quick, you guys, I listened to the coroner talk about the report that she had on this body that was found, and it is horrendous. She had 27 blows and impacts to her face alone, making her completely unidentifiable. They actually had to go back to dental records to confirm that it was Nikki's body. She had been sexually assaulted. She had bruises everywhere, all up and down her body. And the actual cause of death was asphyxiation. And this is when they had also noticed that her body was so bruised and tattered and dirty from the dirt, and they noticed that there was kind of a piece around her neck that was blank, if that makes sense. This was absolutely, just listening to the coroner describe this, it was so awful, and reminds me kind of the Lindsay Buziak case. She was stabbed over 40 times in the face and chest, and that is just complete overkill. So back to where we're at in the case, this is when deputies came knocking on Doug's door at midnight that night and said, hey, we need you to come down. We have some questions. At this point, they were asking Doug the actual interrogation questions now, and he was starting to realize, I'm a suspect. They were asking me what my involvement was. They're asking me what I was doing, and he lawyered up extremely fast. However, he did give them permission to search my house, search my phone. I will do, whatever. However, he did refuse to give a DNA sample, and I always thought that this was kind of interesting because, like I said, it really did seem like he was allowing the police to do whatever the hell they wanted. He wanted to find Nikki, is kind of how it seemed this whole kind of first half of the story so far. So I did find it interesting that he did not give a DNA sample at this time. Now it was also at this time when police asked if Nikki was wearing a pink bracelet. Now this wasn't just like a pink jewelry bracelet, this was like a wristband. Everybody who attended the concert at the Watering Hole had received this hot pink wristband. It was at this point that Doug knew the only reason they would be asking me if she had a pink wristband on that night is if the body that was found also had a pink wristband on. And he immediately broke down bawling, sobbing, and hyperventilating right there during this interrogation. And they were like, hey, what are you feeling? What's going on? And he said, it's her. That's why you're asking me that. And so he basically just said, I was holding out any hope I could that this wasn't going to be Nikki. Everybody kind of knew about Nikki and Doug's rocky relationship. You know, they did fight, they did argue quite often. Not to mention that night, literally Nikki went off because she was so furious at Doug. He was a #1 suspect at this point. Even those close to them weren't exactly coming, you know, to Doug's rescue. They had known that they had had a bumpy relationship. So obviously, you know, the whole investigative team was very quick to act. There were DNA samples taken. Like I said, she was sexually assaulted. So all of this DNA, you know, that they could find on her body was taken. And one thing that they found was on her back, there was zigzag patterns that looked like the back of somebody's shoe or the sole of somebody's shoe. Literally makes me absolutely crazy to think that somebody was actually stomping on her back. She had over 240 injuries to her entire body. I mean, this girl was completely beaten so horrendously. Also led people to believe that the suspect must have known her and known her very well. This is a case where, you know, when overkill happens, that's how it typically pans out. This is usually a very personal attack. As the investigation kind of grew and more people in the city were now hearing about this, a neighbor of Nikki and Doug's actually said that, hey, we actually thought we saw blood on our front lawn the other day. However, like I said, they do kind of live near a woodsy area, and I think this is really weird, but apparently for them, it wasn't unusual for like dead animals to randomly show up, I guess, in their neighborhood. So they just kind of brushed it off and didn't really think anything of it. However, the husband was mowing the lawn that day, and his lawnmower actually ran over, you know, something wiry, and he hurried and stopped and looked, and it did look like a bloody wire. And this is when he was like, okay, this is weird, and they called the authorities. What this meant, it looked like the altercation had taken place at Nikki's home or nearby, and the body was then transported to the nearby Bellevue Woods area that she was found. Again, throwing even more suspicion on Doug. I mean, at this point, everybody thinks it's him. There's no reason not to. Doug is arrested, and he is spending, I think he spent a total time of 18 days in jail while they were trying to basically put him on trial for the first-degree murder of Nikki. And it's at this point when he was like, take my DNA, have it. Like, I know I'm innocent. Whatever you're gonna do with my DNA, fucking take it. I don't care anymore. This is when we get the craziest break in this case and the most bizarre twist. After investigators took a DNA sample, the DNA that was found did not match Doug. It in fact matched a man named George Birch. George Birch had a nickname, and his nickname was Big Country. That is because this man was 6'7" and nearly 250 pounds. That's a big ass man. Now, this George fellow was already tried for murder back in 1998. I mean, he was found not guilty on all accounts, and the murder was actually found out to be like a gang-related situation. However, he still was involved somehow or another. Birch had also been sentenced earlier that year for burglary, so he had a record. This man was an obvious criminal. Now, George was actually on parole already, and once investigators started looking into George and his background, they noticed that it was not that long ago that he was actually in trouble for a hit and run in a Chevy Blazer that he was driving. Here's the next crazy thing, is once they took in George, they used like the Google GPS maps in his phone, and they were able to pinpoint him at every single place Nikki was, including the sardine can, including her home, and including where the body was found. All of this happening between the hours of 2:30 a.m. and 4 a.m., which were basically the exact time that Doug said he was home asleep. So like I said, the story had been all over the news, and because of this, George was able to see that Doug was actually a massive suspect. He knew from all of the news outlets and all of the stories that they had a rocky relationship, and he used that to his advantage to cook up this story. And when I tell you the story, I mean, my dog could make up a better story than this. George said that he met up with Nikki at the sardine can, saw that she was all upset and she needed a shoulder to cry on, and they ended up hitting it off. He then took her home in his Chevy Blazer, and when they pulled into the driveway, Nikki said, oh, like, I have a babysitter in there, like, I don't want to go inside, I don't want anybody to see you, basically is what he said. He said they then started hooking up in the back seat of the Blazer, and this is when Doug came out, and all of a sudden George said he blacked out. He said he passed out and woke up in the grass somewhere that he didn't know of. Like, he woke up in the front yard of somebody's house, essentially. Basically, he goes on to say that he believes that Doug stumbled upon them and then knocked him out or hit him in the back of the head severely hard with some kind of gun or weapon. He then starts to recall that when he came to, Doug made him pick up Nikki's dead body and basically said that Doug made him put her body in the car and held him at gunpoint while he drove out to the woods and left her body there. And that was his story. In spite of his efforts, nobody was buying this, okay? I also want to note in here that to me is a pretty traumatic experience. If I was just, you know, met this girl at a bar, we were doing our thing, whatever, and all of a sudden she looks to be extremely beat up, if not, you know, murdered, and the boyfriend has a gun to me and is making me drive her body somewhere and leaving it in the woods. Why would you not call the authorities? Why would you not call somebody as soon as possible? And his excuse was, well, I was on parole in another state and I thought that if, you know, they found out that I had left the state, I would be in huge trouble. Okay, if a murder just took place of a beautiful young mother, fuck your parole. I mean, seriously, dude, like, what? And if that doesn't make matters worse enough, the very next day he went on a fishing trip with his buddies, and there's actually a photograph of him holding this fish, smiling, big happy look on his face the very next day. The prosecutors were like, really? You were so distraught? You were so upset? Because you were fishing the next day and looked happy as a clam. So basically, with all of this going against him, the next bit of evidence that I want to throw in there was actually for Doug. Now, like I said earlier, Doug was wearing a Fitbit, and at this time, this was kind of the earlier Fitbits. This was back in 2009, but it did track your steps and it did track your sleep. And they actually found out from his Fitbit that he was asleep during that time period that George's phone was pinning all over the freaking place. George's attorneys actually tried to get that evidence thrown out. They were like, this is a Fitbit. You cannot include this in your evidence. Their last attempt at trying to pin this on Doug. So as I said, in spite of his efforts, George was convicted with Nikki's murder. Now, he was convicted with first-degree murder for Nikki on September 7th. While they aren't in a state that does the death penalty, this is an automatic life sentence, and he will be spending the rest of his life in prison. That is the end of the case. It is so extremely heartbreaking. I did want to mention that Doug did press like a civil lawsuit. You know, there was charges up to $350,000 that he was able to sue George for. Now, obviously George did not have that kind of money and he was serving a life sentence, but they were able to get them, I think, like $30,000 to at least try to help. I mean, he was a single dad now, not only taking care of a 6-month-old boy, but also the 2 other beautiful children that Nikki had with her previous marriage. Just to know what those kids were left with is absolutely heartbreaking. My stomach hurts. It rips my heart out. It's disgusting. Why do I make these videos? The reason I make these videos is because of cases just like this. Like I said multiple times now, I'm sure you're sick of it. I guarantee you every single one of us has gone through a scenario like this. I know I have. It's happened to me. I have definitely been at a party, drank way too much, got in a fight with my boyfriend, my now husband, and literally walked out the door. I walked out the door. Look at this scenario. Like, I wanted to talk about this case because to me, this completely hits home. It's so important to not let something like this happen. When you are out having a good time with your friends, please, if you notice a girl who is in this distraught state that Nikki is walking alone, if you notice one of your friends, if you notice anybody at all, please try to do something. There are police officers, security guards, bouncers all over. I know you think you're being annoying or snitchy or getting into someone's business. You know, I'm always the first person. I'm like a no drama mama. I'm always like, mind your own business, mind your own business, mind your own business. This is a situation that happens so freaking much. You just can never be too careful. You never know what's gonna happen, you know? Who cares if you're getting into someone's business? Who cares? Like, you you never know when you could potentially save somebody's life one day, like Nikki's. All right, everybody, that is it for this case. I hope you learned something. I hope that you know, see things differently when you're out with your friends next time you're out at a party. I hope that you think of this kind of a downer, but stay safe, you guys, and I will see you in my next video next week.